Thank you very much. This is the second day meeting for this conference. The overarching theme of this conference is for peace and prosperity, overcoming conflicts through supranational solidarity amid the return of global power competition. So compared to the yesterday's sessions, today's sessions is more academic, driven by specific themes. My name is Hyun-Woo Kim. I'll be chairing this session again today. I'm the president of the Sejong Institute. So this session is specifically about the peace and prosperity, which is about the security sessions. It deals with security issues and peace issues. And I have four renowned panelists who will talk about each country they are residing in, the situations in Azerbaijan, India, Japan, and Republic of Korea. So first panelist is Mr. Vasif Husseinov, who is now head of department AIL Center, Azerbaijan. Second panelist is Nishakant Oja, who is professor on practice, Azinkya D.Y. Patil University in India. Third panelist is Mr. Sachio Nakato, Executive Director at the Division of International Affairs at Ritsumeikan University, Japan. Last but not least, Professor Kim Bum-soo, who is now Professor and Director of the Institute for Peace and Unification Studies at the Seoul National University of Republic of Korea. So I give you each a 20 minutes, maybe 20 to 22 minutes presentation, and probably I'll ask you one or two questions, followed by the questions I would accept from the floor. Okay, so Vasif, yours. Floor is yours.
Thank you very much. Do you hear me? Yeah, great. Thank you very much, Chairman. Dear colleagues, dear friends, it's a great honor to speak here in front of you. In my presentation, I will focus on the geopolitics of the South Caucasus, and in line with our panel title, I will focus primarily on the peace process in the South Caucasus, and primarily between Armenia and Azerbaijan, and how it is affecting geopolitical redesigning of the South Caucasus. But to make it a bit more dynamic and interesting for you, I will talk about also the geopolitical dynamics in the region and how recently the South Caucasus geopolitical architecture is changing. Until recently, until 2020 primarily, when there was a war in the region between Armenia and Azerbaijan, the South Caucasus used to be a very stable place in terms of its geopolitical standing. And we had a very consolidated geopolitical choice, external orientation of the three countries of the region. Here you see Armenia, Azerbaijan, and Georgia, the three South Caucasian countries who are bordered in the north with Russia, in the south with Iran and Turkey. And this geostrategic location has had very clear and unavoidable consequences for foreign policies of the regional countries. In the case of Armenia, until recently, we have seen again very stable positioning in its foreign policy, aligning with Russia in terms of military partnerships within the CSTO, Russia's military bloc, Collective Security Treaty Organization. And also Armenia is an ally of Russia within Eurasian Economic Union. And this choice of Armenia has been quite stable, unchanged over the past 3 decades, since the collapse of the Soviet Union. And at the same time, we have Georgia in the South Caucasus, which has taken very different positioning in its foreign policy, trying to enter European Union and NATO. And these aspirations, EU and NATO aspirations of Georgia, have brought very significant challenges to the country and even to a war with Russia in 2008. And nevertheless, Georgia has remained also quite stable in its choice in terms of external orientation. And until recently, we have seen Georgian people, Georgian governments trying to find a way to get into European Union and, if possible, also to NATO as well. And against this background, we have Azerbaijan in the South Caucasus, which has taken a very different positioning. And Azerbaijan avoided both Western integration process in terms of membership to the European Union or NATO. And at the same time, Azerbaijan avoided Russia's military and economic blocs. This is also quite the recent change because until Georgia's war with Russia in 2008, Azerbaijan was also trying to enter NATO and EU. And for example, in 2007, Azerbaijan's national security concept declared Euro-Atlantic integration a national choice, objective of Azerbaijan. But Russia's war with Georgia in 2008 demonstrated that such a reckless choice in foreign policy to try to enter European Union and NATO would bring some confrontation in Azerbaijan's relations with Russia, which is the reason why we have avoided that choice, that orientation as well. And despite the fact that national security concept of Azerbaijan adopted in 2007 remains unchanged, but nevertheless, Azerbaijan does not pursue Euro-Atlantic integration anymore. And on the contrary, in 2011, Azerbaijan joined non-aligned movement and became a non-aligned country, which basically meant that Azerbaijan is no longer planning to enter either Euro-Atlantic political and military structures or Russia's military or economic blocs. And this is the reason why, at the moment, Azerbaijan remains a non-aligned country with no objectives to enter any military blocs. And this geopolitical architecture of the region started to change, which is the reason why in the beginning I said it, geopolitical redesigning of the South Caucasus. This geopolitical architecture, which I just introduced here, Russia ally Armenia, EU NATO aspirant Georgia, and non-aligned Azerbaijan, this is right now shifting. And this shifts started with some significant events in the South Caucasus over the past 6 years. And the first major blow to the status quo in the South Caucasus established after the collapse of the Soviet Union in early 1990s was the resolution of the Armenia-Azerbaijan conflict. This brought very significant changes to the South Caucasus because this conflict was one of the strongholds of the post-Soviet status quo in the region. Russia primarily was using the Armenia-Azerbaijan conflict to maintain some influence over Armenia and at the same time over Azerbaijan. Because due to the conflict, Armenia was very isolated. Its borders with Azerbaijan and Turkey were closed in early 1990s. And at the same time, in order to defend itself against Azerbaijan and Turkey, Armenia had to get into military military alliance with Russia. And it made Armenia very dependent on Russia. And that's the reason why when we succeeded to resolve the conflict through the war in 2020, which was called Second Karabakh War, we liberated the territories occupied by Armenia in early 1990s, and the conflict was basically resolved. And the resolution of the conflict was the first major shock to Russia's standing in the South Caucasus. And despite the fact that after the war, Russia managed to deploy its peacekeeping forces to Karabakh, but in 2023, Azerbaijan succeeded to put an end to separatist regime Armenia established in Karabakh and to kick Russia's peacekeepers out of the region. So this was the first shock, and as I mentioned, it happened even before the Ukraine war, because the Ukraine war brought even more changes. But the Second Karabakh War in 2020 happened before the Ukraine war and already demonstrated that the post-Soviet structure of the South Caucasus is going to change. And the Ukraine war, of course, brought even more changes because Russia weakened even further. And the weaker Russia is, the more difficult for it became to maintain its influence in the South Caucasus. And eventually, Armenia started to distance itself from Russia. And that's the reason why today Armenia is led by a pro-Western government, which has very hostile relations with Russia, with Putin's government. Russia has recently imposed some sanctions on Armenia, but nevertheless did not stop Armenia's pro-Western integration, because earlier this month there was a parliamentary elections in Armenia again, and pro-Russian forces were defeated. And they could not defeat pro-Western government of Nikol Pashinyan despite Russia's support. And the Iran war brought more changes, and in the meantime, another major country of the region, Georgia, started to also build some balance between the West and Russia and China. And it is not welcomed by the Western actors, obviously, but nevertheless, Georgia has remained quite steadfast in its choice of balancing between major global actors. So in this context, the first, one of the major changes in the South Caucasus geopolitical architecture took place last year in August. It was the first time ever that the United States managed to gain a foothold in the South Caucasus at the expense of Russia's influence, Russia's role in the region. In August last year, President Trump succeeded to bring the leaders of Armenia and Azerbaijan together in White House and to resolve some outstanding issues in the Armenia-Azerbaijan peace process. Why peace process? Because despite the fact that the conflict resolved, but still we don't have a peace treaty between Armenia and Azerbaijan. And the lack of peace treaty is creating some uncertainty for the future of Armenia-Azerbaijan relations. And this uncertainty can be instrumentalized by external actors, including by Russia, to somehow recreate the conflict and hostilities in the region. And that's the reason why when Trump succeeded to bring the two countries together, it was a very strong blow to Russia's role in the South Caucasus. And in a very significant way, this summit in White House in August last year was also very significant in terms of regional connectivity projects. Because at the moment, Azerbaijan and Central Asian countries, including Georgia, we are building middle corridor, which is a very significant transportation route between Europe and Asia. And in White House last year, we succeeded to agree with Armenia on another transportation passage. You see here in the map between, you see Aghband and Ordubad. These are two Azerbaijan cities, and the transportation route between these two cities are passing through the territory of Armenia. And why it is important? Because this route is going to shorten the middle corridor and to make it even more profitable, more economic for the users of middle corridor to transport their products between Europe and Asia. And this is now, this corridor between two parts of Azerbaijan, which will pass the territory of Armenia, it is going to be under control of the United States. It is a very big blow to Russia's role in the South Caucasus because after 2020 war, Armenia and Azerbaijan agreed with Russia to deploy Russia's border guards to that corridor, which is called Zengezur Corridor. But now everyone forgot that agreement with Russia. Last year in August, United States succeeded to replace Russia as guarantor of the Zengezur Corridor. And it is very big blow to Russia's geopolitical standing in the South Caucasus. So that's the reason why overall the strategic outlook of the region is going to be quite unpredictable and most likely going to be more and more distancing from Russia and in parallel increasing the role of the United States in the region. One of the first recent developments in that context was the elections in Armenia earlier this month. Despite all the efforts of Russia, pro-Russian forces, political forces, lost the elections, and pro-Western government of Nikol Pashinyan now got almost third-fifths of the parliament, which basically means that the government of Pashinyan is going to be able to make very critical decisions without the involvement of the opposition forces. Yeah, Armenian elections in earlier this month. So another major variable to watch in the upcoming years will be the implementation of the Zengezur Corridor project with the United States, because Russia and Iran are trying to prevent the implementation of the Zengezur Corridor project. If they succeed to stop it, of course, it will reverse some of the recent geopolitical changes in the region. But otherwise, it is going to be even more pro-Western in terms of Armenia and Azerbaijan's choice in external relations. Another major variable is, of course, Russia-Ukraine war. We don't know how the war will end, what implications it will have for the post-Soviet space, including for the South Caucasus. But everyone understands that the longer the war takes, the weaker Russia becomes, and it has very serious consequences for Russia's role in the post-Soviet space. Another major variable is Middle Corridor and its governance. Now Central Asia and Azerbaijan are trying to upgrade the Middle Corridor by applying very state-of-art digital and other instruments in order to make it more profitable for companies to export their products, and also to remove some of bottlenecks in the project. It is quite costly. It is quite difficult process. That's the reason why I called it one of the key variables to watch whether Azerbaijan and Central Asian countries manage to remove these bottlenecks or not. It will have very significant implications for the future of Middle Corridor. And fifth variable, you see here, EU coherence on Azerbaijan, Azerbaijan's relations with the European Union, with the United States, are going to affect the future of the South Caucasus as well. because unlike Armenia, who has taken very clear pro-Western orientation recently, Azerbaijan is still trying to maintain some balance between Russia, EU, China. And in that context, Azerbaijan is also getting increasingly more pressure from major actors to make a clear choice in foreign policy. This is going to be another key variable to what extent Azerbaijan will succeed to maintain its neutrality in very intensifying geopolitical dynamics. It remains to be seen. So, it is all I wanted to tell you about the geopolitical redesigning of the region. I'm looking forward to any questions you may have. Thank you for your attention.
Thank you very much. I think there is very important major shifts in the South Caucasus region. One of the questions I have for you, so what do you think will be, I have two questions. What do you think will be the future changes in those regions, especially that is relevant to Azerbaijan's foreign policy? What would be some options that Azerbaijan have for its foreign policy in the near future? That's the first question. And second one I'm wondering is, I think there have been several factors that has weakened the Russian influence in this region. But I see that Georgia's foreign policy is moving to a reverse way. It was pretty much towards the EU and NATO, but as Russia's influence is decreasing, it's trying to be balanced between the West and Russia. Mm-hmm. So why do you think the Georgia's taking that kinds of behavior? That's my question. You can answer later on. Okay. Second presenter is let me see, where is it? Mr. Oja Nishakant, Peace in Southeast Asia. Yeah.
Okay, good morning. My name is Sachio Nakato from Kyoto, Japan. I'd like to discuss about ontological stability and ontological balancing to compare Japan and South Korea's foreign behavior, especially regarding on regional order. Basically, I'd like to discuss how Japan and South Korea respond differently to competing regional orders in Northeast Asia and also Pacific too.
Professor, can you speak louder?
Okay. So my basic argument is that these differences cannot fully explained through material interest alone. So instead, they reflect different forms of, we call it ontological security. So I suggest that post-war Japan can be understood as a case of ontological stability, while South Korea represents a case of ontological balancing. Okay. Oh, sorry. Yes, this is a puzzle. In contemporary Northeast Asia, several regional order projects coexist. These include WIPE, Free and Open Indo-Pacific, AIIB, Asia Infrastructure Investment Bank, and BRI, and GTI. Does everybody know what GTI stands for? It may be a pretty famous concept in South Korea, but not really in Japan. I'm not really sure how many of scholars in Japan, especially focusing on international relations, they are familiar with this idea, GTI. GTI stands for Greater Two-Man Initiative. So this project used to be called Two-Man River Development Area Project. people discussed this project back in 1990s, and some scholars in Japan as well, they are focusing on this project. But now, there haven't been prominent progress. Therefore, the interest of human development projects just disappeared, at least in Japan. So each embodies a different vision of regional cooperation and regional space. The key question is how states position themselves toward these competing regional orders. So Japan and South Korea share several structural similarities. So both Japan and South Korea, they are allies of the United States. And both countries are economically dependent on China. And they are often described as middle power. And we often emphasize on the value aspect, saying that both countries are liberal democracy. However, they respond quite differently. Japan shows a relatively consistent preference, and South Korea participates in multiple regional initiatives simultaneously. Why they are different? So just take a look at existing explanation for explaining differences between Japan and South Korea. If you are a realist, probably you could emphasize on the aspect of alliance and U.S. Alliance, and also dependence on China. So you might say that you have to balance China through U.S., Japan, or U.S. ROK alliance. But this is not really the case, especially in case of South Korea. South Korea engaged in BRI, AIB, at the same time, HOIP as well. If you are liberals, you may emphasize on economic interdependence, institutional cooperation. But in case of Japan, even though there might be some economic interest, but Japan has not engaged in AIB and BRI and even GTI. Why that? And if you are focusing on domestic politics, in South Korea, progressive and conservative, they often considered as quite different worldview and perspectives. But despite changes in administration, both South Korea continue to engage in all the projects I described here. So these explanations provide valuable insights. However, they just simply focusing or primarily focusing on strategic calculations as well as material interest. So they tell us less about why states continue to seek particular regional spaces as part of their self-understanding. So analytical framework, I like to focus on strategic culture and ontological security. So this study combines strategic culture with ontological security. So strategic culture explains long-term pattern of foreign policy, and ontological security explains how states maintain stable self-identities. So this question is not only what do states want, but also who they are and where they belong to. Okay, I'd like to discuss about ontological stability as well as ontological balancing. So ontological stability. Japan represents what I call post-war ontological stability. Right here, maybe. Since 1945, several identities have gradually emerged and converged. Japan is often described as maritime state, or even trading state, and US ally, and supporter of a liberal international order. So these identities form a relatively coherent and stable narratives. So as a result, Japan tends to support regional orders that reinforce these narratives. On the other hand, in case of South Korea, in this presentation, South Korea represents ontological balancing. South Korea is different from the case of Japan. South Korea presents a different picture. Its identities include, of course, South Korea can be described as a maritime state, trading state even, or peninsula state, continental connecting state, or divided nations, or middle power, such and such. So these identities coexist. So rather than converging into one dominant narrative, different from the case of Japan, so they remain simultaneously existing and relevant. Therefore, South Korea seeks to maintain engagement with multiple regional orders. I call this ontological balancing. So this is a kind of case study. Maritime regional order represented by FOIP. So FOIP, Free and Open Indo-Pacific Initiative or strategy, illustrate the contrast. Japan actively promotes FOIP. Japan is actually the founder of FOIP and actively promoting the FOIP initiative. FOIP is broadly consistent with Japan's post-war regional narrative. On the other hand, South Korea also engages with FOIP, especially during the UN administration. The UN administration published the so-called Indo-Pacific strategy. In that policy document, South Korea even described itself as Indo-Pacific state or pivotal state. So they are engaging in FOIP too. However, South Korea does so while emphasizing inclusiveness and flexibility, not too hostile to China, not too exclusive to China as well. So that is the difference between Japan and South Korea. And in case of continental regional order, in this case, AIB, BRI, and GTI, the contrast becomes clear in continental initiative between Japan and South Korea. South Korea participated in AIB, is one of the founding members, and cooperate with BRI and maintains involvement in GDI. On the other hand, Japan remains much more cautious about these three regional initiatives. GTI is particularly important. Unlike FOIP or AIB, GTI cannot easily be reduced to a result of US-China strategic competition. This is more like a regional cooperation in Northeast Asia. Therefore, it provides a useful case for examining regional identity and also ontological security. So this is a tentative conclusion. To conclude, Japan and South Korea respond differently to competing regional orders. These differences reflect different forms of ontological security. Japan seeks stability through a relatively consolidated regional narrative called liberal maritime regional order. On the other hand, South Korea seeks balance among multiple regional narratives. So understanding this difference helps explain why these two countries continue to behave differently despite sharing many structural similarity. So this is just my hypothetical idea. I just got this idea only 3 weeks ago when we have a GTI meeting back in Kyoto Ritsumeikan University. Kiev, Korean Institute for International Economic Policy, they asked us to have a seminar on GTI and also the possible involvement of Japan. But the problem is the Japanese government has actively promoting HOIP. At the same time, virtually almost no interest in GTI. So I was wondering why Japan is not really interested in involving GTI, but maybe you could also ask the different kind of question. Why South Korea has actively engaged everything there. So try to figure out the different behavior between Japan and South Korea regarding regional order. This is only one of my hypotheses to understand the differences. Probably you may have many comments because this pretty much lacks empirical studies. This is just more like a tentative idea to explain the differences. Thank you very much for listening.
Thank you, Professor Nakato. It was very interesting presentation. I have one question for you. You brought up a ontological definition of South Korea's security issues, which makes sense, but I'm not pretty much convinced with that argument because even from the rationalistic perspective, you can just look at South Korea and Korean Peninsula geopolitically located within the end of the Chinese continent, which has a lot of hard time in its balancing behaviors. So I'm not sure why you are going into constructivist approaches rather than just posing yourself within the rationalist approaches. What is the meaning and purpose of doing that? So that's my question. I will come back to Professor Nashakant Oja. Please, thank you.
Thank you so much. Till the time the PPT get uploaded, I just wanted to start the session so the time is saved. So I was supposed to give the two presentation. There was some confusion from my side, but I'm trying to merge these two presentation into one. One was what we are talking about the peace in. We are talking about the peace in Asia and peace in Southeast Asia, and the other was the nuclear deterrence. We are talking about the nuclear, from the nuclear deterrence to strategic stability. So we'll talk something about that, and I think hopefully I will be trying to merge these two into short, precise presentation. To begin with, I'll just want to start that since nuclear is one of the most hot subject and hot topic, and initially in my yesterday talk, I told you that I will be introducing you a new terminology which will be known as a nuclear diplomacy also. So we are talking about the nuclear deterrence for the strategic stability. I'll try to cover it into a holistic view, entire what's going on the entire global scenario, but the main focus will be on the India and adjacent countries so that we get a clear-cut idea about the national securities and other things. So, okay, I think it's not, okay, it's gone. So, since I was told that it's more of an academic session, so I've tried to make a presentation like little bit about the theoretical, and I'll be talking something about the practical things which is on the ground level. So when we are talking about the nuclear deterrence, nuclear diplomacy, and strategic stability in the second nuclear age, we can see after the present scenario what happened Russia and Ukraine, and when we are talking about the Iran and Israel, US, the mega mess which is going around the entire geospatial, the entire world. And everybody, you can say, going and parking itself on the nuclear, that whoever has the nuclear capability is the boss, and he has got the muscles to show to the world. And that's, they are pretending that nuclear is just a kind of now more of a respect stature rather than anything else. So a country who has got the nuclear, he is respected. A country who has not got a nuclear capability, no way. Jesus Christ, you are not in our list. So that's something we are talking about. And regional alliance and coalitions are now increasing and playing in a controlled way. And okay, next. Okay. Okay. So this is something we are talking about. The environment has changed, the guardrails are failing, the threats are new. And the most precise and the beautiful example would be the Iran issue which we are talking about. In my yesterday conversation also, I told you that they were involved, their nuclear diplomacy, I will not say a military diplomacy, or no, I will not say a kind of a geopolitical diplomacy, but nuclear diplomacy, they were able to get recognition by the JCPO and IA. And the audit was going on. So this is something which everybody is just trying to figure it out. So we are talking about the environment has changed, and the guardians are failing, the threats are new. Next slide, please. So from my side, when we are talking about the global nuclear order stands at a historic crossroad, and the expansions are modernization of the nuclear arsenals, the erosion of the arms control framework, the emergence of the nuclear power and doctrines, growing geopolitical rivalry among major powers, and the weakening of the strategic trust. You can see the Cuban Missile Crisis of 1962, the strategic arm limitation talks SALT, the intermediate range nuclear INF, treaty START, New START, and numerous confidence building measures collectively prevented nuclear confrontation despite profound geopolitical rivalry. So today, while deterrence remains, nuclear diplomacy has become the most critical missing pillar of the global security. Now, to give you a global nuclear, just a glimpse, let's talk about the Russia. So as an estimated warheads in Russia has something around 5,500 warheads ready for deployment and ready for use. United States has 5,177, China 600, France 290, India 190. Pakistan 170, Israel 90, North Korea 60. These are some of the estimated warheads which are ready at the tip of the missiles to fire and to go. So total global inventory, we are talking about something about 12,200 warheads, which we are talking about the nuclear. And what it's talking about, it's not about the warheads or it's something, because the scenario has changed and more of a civilian's life and the dependency of the country would be, we are talking about the energy dependency. And then we are talking about the energy diplomacy also. Now for energy diplomacy, we need to have a kind of a nuclear side support for us, that we are talking about the reactors and other things, microbiologies, we are talking about the medicals and other things which are there, which needs a core support of the nuclear capability. But in the present scenario, I have seen that more of a things, rather than working on a constructive sides, we are working on the destructive sides. So more of people, they are ready to, after this Iran and Israel war, more and more countries have started. I would like to put it on the record also that even the South Korea has feel the necessity that we should not be left like that. So everybody, we are talking about the Philippines, we are talking about the Indonesia, we are talking about the Vietnam. Everybody is just working on basically for the nuclear capability building and enriching those things to safeguard their country. That I told you that it has become it's more of a safeguard mechanism for a country to move forward. Next. What makes a threat credible? It's basically, I told you, you can read it. This is a theoretical things, but I will be speaking more of a practical things also. So capability, communication, the advisory must clearly understand the threat, the readiness and the consequences. The advisory must believe the threat we are carried out. Now, we are talking about the nuclear communication, or I would say it's not a nuclear communication. Everything which we are talking about in today's scenario, we are talking about the diplomacy. So it's more of a diplomacy. It's basically a communication which I want to communicate to the entire world in a more constructive and more presentable way. So nuclear diplomacy refers to the use of political dialogues, negotiation, confidence building, measures, strategic communication, treaties, and crisis management to prevent nuclear confrontation and reduce escalation risk. The best example is about the Iran. Why I'm quoting mostly about the Iran? Because I have worked on the Iran subject a lot. And at that time, it started, and in the peace negotiation, the MOU which is likely to get signed or it has been signed, they have not left. They said that nuclear, we are talking about the nuclear enrichment and everything that will be on the phase 2. Right now, you want Strait of Hormuz to be open, we will open it. But that we want that it should not be taken us from like that, because the day they feel that the nuclear capability has been taken, they are finished. And the beauty of this MOU which has gone is that US has become as an observer in between the JCPO and the IA. These two agencies has got reactivated. And US has become a kind of a mediator who will mediate in between doing the audit and then basically the scrutinizing and all those kind of stuff. So that's something which you should, it's something which needs to be taken on record, and due consideration needs to be taken for the countries. It's basically a Cold War order. Everybody, I gave you some example about the front runners, the Philippines, the Indonesia, the Vietnam, where everybody is basically running for these kind of things. And in fact, some countries we are talking about the evidence. I want to tell you how it got activated about the Iranian issue. It's not about the nuclear capability anybody is obstructing, or it's basically how the nuclear capability is perceived and how it is to be used. That's the most important thing. Now, there was some kind of an evidence which was gathered by the CIA a long time back, and in which it was found that they are collecting the nuclear capability from different sources. That basically triggered out that if something has been hidden, it might be used for a destructive purpose. That's something. But when I was talking to the Iranian counterpart, they told me that no, we don't want to take it and use it for a destructive purpose. We want to use it for energy, we want to use it for the medical, we want to use it for the microbiology. Cosmic, anything they are talking about. They said it's not only about that. But the question mark is that once the weapon is in your hand, it's up to you how you want to use it. So nobody believes. Even in India, after this particular thing, we thought that, okay, now it's time to increase our nuclear capability. We cannot sit like a duck and wait for somebody, Tom and Jerry, to ask us and say, okay. But our policy is that no use of nuclear first. That the defense minister has told earlier also. So, theoretically, you can go, you talk about the Nuclear Non-Proliferation Treaty 1968, Strategic Arms Reduction, Iran Nuclear Agreement, JCPO. One of the findings which basically we are talking about the nuclear diplomacy is declining. What I should say, nuclear diplomacy is declining while nuclear competition is increasing. So that we need to see expiration of the New START, failure of the 11th NPT review, station of the Conference on Disarmament. Have you seen that in this present scenario, the role of the JCPO and IA has literally got finished? They were not asked for anything. So it's something which people have, it's more of a competition than more of a strategic things or more of a diplomacy or more of a geopolitical tools. So another findings is basically the future nuclear challenge is political, not technological. So most nuclear crises have been resulted from technology failure. Now we are talking about the destruction, the mass destruction weapons. We are talking about the autonomous warfare. Now everything will be nuclear is enriched and it is embedded with the AI, it is embedded with the quantum, it is embedded with the control and command center. So a lot of things is basically put up, like US has already created a control and command center of the nuclear. So these are some of the things which we needs to be taken, and the strategic lesson we should learn that diplomacy remains humanity's most effective nuclear risk reduction mechanism. The third is the Korean Peninsula, demonstrate the importance of the nuclear diplomacy. Now, when we are talking about the Korean Peninsula remains among the world's most dangerous nuclear flashpoints, everybody gets scared. Oh, what about North Korea? So, North Korea, approximately, as of the information which we have, has around 60 nuclear warheads ready for deployment. Material sufficient for up to 90 weapons ready to use. Expanding missiles capability at the level of 20% every month. Despite military tension, diplomatic mechanisms such as six-party talks, inter-Korean summits, US DPPK engagement, Washington Declaration, Nuclear Consultative Group, NCG, have contributed significantly to prevent the escalation. But it's something, I told you, that when the weapon is in my hand, in which direction I have to use, when to use, how to use, for whom to use, and how much to use, it is in my acumen. I don't need a permission of anybody. So that's the most dangerous thing which needs to be taken. Even so, the strategic observation is that even limited diplomacy has proven more effective at managing risk than military pressure alone. Finding force, which I have gathered, nuclear diplomacy must expand beyond the traditional armament control. Emerging technology diplomacy, that's the reason yesterday I told you about. It's more of a technology diplomacy, it's more of a risk reduction diplomacy, it's more of a strategic stability diplomacy, it's more of a regional nuclear diplomacy where we are talking about the Korean Peninsula, South Asia, Middle East, Taiwan, Straits. During the Cold War diplomacy, and you will appreciate that, try to understand that nuclear diplomacy is becoming more of a multipolar. So for future diplomacy must involve like United States, Russia, China, India, Pakistan, France, UK, regional stakeholder. This requires entirely a new diplomatic architecture. I mean, the rise of the nuclear is diplomacy is 2.0. I'm just not going to bother you with. I'm just giving you the concrete points which basically will be flag for you. So, as on that, what the nuclear diplomacy, and we have summarize everything, that there are 5 diplomatic priorities which for the international communities which needs to be taken. The priority 1 is establish a global nuclear risk reduction forum. Jesus Christ, I don't know how much it will be effective because nobody wants to come on that particular platform. So under UN auspicious involving all nuclear armed states, I asked one of the UN gentlemen, I said, are you not feeling that your importance and your power has degraded? Nobody asks you anything. He said, that's basically, it's the capability which they are developing day by day. I mean, there will be a time where there will be nobody, they will not ask anybody. So these forums and these things, the international organization should work hard enough to make its position more and more strong, so that no Tom and Jerry can just like one day, fine morning, will start and doing anything. So, establish a global nuclear risk reduction forum. That is basically we are talking on from the suggestion from the Indian perspective and some of the allied countries from the India. Priority 2 is institutionalize the nuclear hotlines. Basically, every nuclear power should maintain a political hotlines, military hotlines, strategic command and control channels. Priority 3, create a nuclear stability dialogues among major powers, US, Russia, and China. Because these 3 countries are there. I told you that now everybody is demonstrating and everybody is building the nuclear capability. But these, if you can see the warheads and the kind of the arsenals which they possess, The US and Russia and China are basically the triumvirate, these three countries where they should be get involved, and more backdoor diplomacy, track two diplomacy, or the nuclear diplomacy should be made much more effective by the other regional blocs and other regional countries, and pressurize on them to work on something which will be beneficial for the society. Priority 4, develop a code for conduct for the nuclear behavior. I'm not very satisfied with this priority, because he's talking about the nuclear signaling, missile testing notification. Who will tell you? We'll fire, we'll test it, and then one fine morning you will come to know that we have tested. So there should be a kind of an ecosystem which needs to be created. Some gentleman from US came and he told, why don't we have a kind of a nuclear park? I said, okay, you told me about IT park, you told me about the semiconductor park, now I'm talking about the nuclear park. So that's something which needs to be taken. I'm just 2 minutes, just completing. And the priority slides you can move, keep. So global nuclear picture for just your eye, you can just see what is happening. And then the priority 5, we are talking about track 1.5, track 2 nuclear diplomacy, build trust, reduce misunderstanding, generate policy options, facilitate back channels communication. It's off the record, but it was my conversation with the Iran, because I had worked very closely with the Iranians. And I told him, if you don't want to use it for a destructive purpose, why don't you disclose and get the uranium audited? What is the fear in that? He said that it's not about the audit. We are in line with the JCPO and IA, and their team has come and did the audit. But if one fine morning you tell me to give all our uranium to us, then he said that, but we are ready to give you an undertaking and an agreement that we will not use it for a destructive purpose. It will be only used for the constructive purpose, for the beneficial of the society and for the world peace. So that's something, it's a miscommunication which is presented. Like India, we also don't want to use the nuclear for some kind of arsenals or some kind of a warhead, something like that. But when we talk about the nuclear, it's flags like that, okay, he's working for the missiles, he's working for the warheads, he's working for some kind of arsenals or some weapons. So that build trust and reduce misunderstanding should be taken by the track 1.5 diplomacy. And this kind of forums, like your forum, think tanks, they should work effectively and take it to the different countries in a more and more constructive way. So China, the fastest growing arsenals, I told you, they are going like anything. 100 warheads per year, they are in the race. And Beijing declines trilateral arms talks, they are not ready to talk. About the Asian countries, South Asian countries, the problem is that they are working and they are doing a very effective nuclear diplomacy, basically, to talk to the P5 countries and tell them that, okay, you need to give an undertaking that you will not use any kind of a nuclear weapons against these Asian or Southeastern Asian countries. But it's not happening. That is one of the area where these think tanks and these people should work together and try that. Because if you are telling the other country that, okay, don't use the nuclear arsenals or warheads for any kind of a destructive purpose, you should adopt that thing to yourself also. So that's the communication gap which is happening between these triangulate countries. Please. I'll just run and then I'll conclude. The architecture is unraveling. ABM, you can use this slide. It's about how the journey started 2002, 19, and May 2020. NPT revision fails. Next. The Korean Peninsula, I have told you, you can move on so that the audience can see. So it's basically assembled warheads, fissile material for up to 90, nuclear test 2060, you know all this in automatic reiteration, Seoul authorities. You can keep it the slide. And extended deterrence, Washington declared an NCG, recommend consultation, the NCG forum, visibility, integration. Next. The assurance gap, support an indigenous nuclear weapons, 76.3, support deploying US tactical weapons. Our confidence the US would use nuclear arms to defend the ROK. Next, please. Southeast Asia and comparative lessons. It was a beautiful slide, but because of the time constraint, we cannot tell, but we'll just run it very fast. So Southeast Asia zone hedging in occurs, the hedging dilemma, Indonesia and Malaysia, Singapore, Vietnam and the Philippines, the South China, signed 1995, enforced 1997, the protocol problem. One thing I am very happy that at least by this war, the IA and the GCPO and the nuclear NPT has got its relevance and its power back. And they will be much more in a better position to work effectively. Next, please. Deterrence under the nuclear overhang. India, credible minimum deterrence, no first use. The defense minister visited South Korea around 2 months back, and he told that we will never use any kind of, and we have signed basically. We have not signed, sorry, my apology. We have not signed, but it's our principle that we will never use. That's a question mark. So Pakistan, full spectrum deterrence on NFU battle tactical, and Pakistan has also refused not to sign. So I told you it's more of not about the nuclear diplomacy, it's more about a competition. No, we will never let it go like that, because the time we have that nuclear, everybody is afraid from us. So, next slide, please. Your operation, I'll just backslide, please. Case study was there. I just wanted to discuss this Operation Sindoor, which was conducted against Pakistan. And you can see that combined nuclear war was never considered. We have never thought of using any kind of a nuclear arsenals in any of the way or in any of the war. From last decade, you can see. Never ever. So even in the recent attack which was happened, we have not used anything, and there is never been, it was told precisely not to use. So India may have been knocking, but it remains several doors away from the nuclear one. Next, please. 4 cautionary tales that shape the debate: Iran, Ukraine, Israel, Libya. Now, one question is about the Israel. I'm talking about the Iran. I've raised a lot of flags about Iran. Okay, you don't want to use it against for a destructive purpose, then you should get it audited by the JCPO and IA. But what about the Israel? They have never disclosed. And the evidence and the citations are there that they have got the capabilities with them. So these are some of the things which needs to be, it's very complicated scenario which is in front of us. Libya, the disarmament trap, Ukraine, assurance plus guarantees, something like that, please. Next. The new frontier, you can move. So left of one command system becomes the target. So I told you that's when the technology is embedded with basically the nuclear capability, it's a hell. It's something which is beyond, and it will reshape the world in a different way. Next. AI, hypersonic, and the compression of that time. Hypersonic, already China has done, US has done, and more probably, we have got some record that even Iran has the capability of integrating the AI in the hypersonic missiles. Next. Space, counter space, the eyes of the deterrence, you can see. Demonstrated and satellites test, basically 2007 China, and that you can read it. It's not, can move. Non-state actors and nuclear terrorism, dirty bombs, that basically we are talking about improvised nuclear devices, documented intent, that we are talking about the weapon of the mass destructions, autonomous warfare we are talking about. Next. Deterrence is now a cross-domain problem, nuclear, conventional, cyber, space, information. So it's not only a nuclear word. It looks a little bit sticky and very alarming, but it has got the relevance. And the repercussion is much more severe and much more spreaded way. Please, next. I've discussed. Next. State agenda for stability, that's a way forward which we have given. I would request the think tank, basically, if you can just forward this slide for the students to read. Next. 4 things to carry out. It's all a theoretical things. Next. Reference and standard closed. Thank you so much for your patience. And so there was some technology gap, but we'll try next time. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Next, Professor Kim Bum-soo, please.
I'm waiting. My PPT is ready. Okay. Good morning, everyone. It is my great honor to participate at this conference, 2026 Culture and Strategic Forum. My name is Bum-soo Kim. I'm serving as a director for Institute for Peace and Unification Study at Seoul National University. Today, I will examine a question that has become more urgent than ever. Peace on the Korean Peninsula. Why is it so important? As you may know, peace is very, very important, but today I will argue that peace is very, very, very important in Korean Peninsula. So in a world where the international order is being fundamentally changing, I think it is very, very important to understand the strategic reality on Korean Peninsula. So today's presentation consists of 4 parts. First, introduction, and the second, I will explain why North Korea is not Iran, why North Korea is different, why the strategic bombing or the strike is impossible, is not feasible in North Korea, on Korean Peninsula. And third, we will examine South Korea's defense capability. And finally, I will argue why a peace-first approach is the only realistic way on the Korean Peninsula. Then let's examine the rapidly changing international order. As you may know, for decades, we lived under rule-based liberal international order. At the 1990s, many people believed that Kantian perpetual peace will be realized soon. However, that era has ended, and we have returned to power politics. Power politics, and as you can see, the GDP gap between China and US slowly decreasing. So in this chart, the yellow shows the US GDP, and the blue line shows the China's GDP. As you can see, the gap between the US and China gradually decreasing. And in terms of the PPP GDP, actually the China overtake US in the middle of the 2010s. So as a result, as you can see, the competition between China and US is evolving significantly these days. Sorry. Okay. And the Russo-Ukraine war since 2014 has shattered our illusion of global stability. Under this situation, since January 2024, the second Trump administration has accelerated this shift with its America First and MAGA doctrines. We have seen a return to unilateralism, aggressive tariff policy, and even imperialistic rhetoric. Most notably, the recent US strike on Iranian nuclear facility and the capture of the President Maduro in Venezuela demonstrate a new era. And the assassination of the Khamenei earlier this year proved that for the current US administration, war is indeed a continuation of politics by other means. So under this situation, many scholars ask me, maybe the next target might be Kim Jong-un. So after the fall of Hussein and the strike on Iran, some media worldwide are speculating whether the North Korean leadership is at risk of Iran-style decapitation strike. So as you can see, after Maduro and Khamenei, is it time for Kim Jong-un? North Korean leader may become Trump's next target due to this kind of newspaper articles appear this year. And here is the North Korean leadership at risk of Iran-style decapitation strike. And the YouTube channel, you can see this kind of things. The Kim Jong-un will be Trump's next target. So many scholars ask me, why not bombing North Korea? So maybe if the Korea, South Korea and US have a joint operation on North Korea, then might be the North Korean nuclear problem will be resolved. So, but I said, it is very, very difficult. The North Korea situation is very, very different from that of Iran. So I will examine why North Korea case is different from Iran's case. The first one, as you can see in this table, North Korea already has a nuclear warhead. While Iran's program was set back by strike, North Korea is already a nuclear power. Actually, the Professor Ozia you mentioned many times in your presentation. Now, North Korea, it is estimated enriched 50 nuclear warhead is already constructed and ready for use. And some estimate that North Korea has as a maximum of 150 warhead today and potentially reaching 400 nuclear warhead by 2040. So the cost of a preemptive strike is not just a military failure, it is a global catastrophe. That is the first reason. And the second reason is geopolitical environment. As you know, unlike Iran, North Korea is backed by China and Russia. So as we saw during the 80s Victory Day of China, three countries convened together and they showed their friendship and military bond. So the military bond among these three countries became stronger than ever. And as you can see here, North Korea sent North Korean soldiers to the Russian-Ukraine war, and last May, couple of weeks ago, North Korean soldiers parading in Moscow symbolized that any strike on Pyongyang risk a full-scale war with 3 nuclear-armed countries. And the third reason is the most critical reason is geographical proximity. I'm sorry. As you can see in the map, the distance between Israel and Tehran is 1,900 kilometers. 1,900 kilometers. So if Iran launched the missile, it would take about 4 hours to reach Israel. So which allow Israel make some proliferation. But Korean case is very, very different. You know how far is from North Korea? From here? So North Korea, Israel and Tehran is 1,900 kilometers, but Seoul and North Korea is just only 50 kilometers, 35 miles away from here. So if North Korea launch missile, it would take just 10 minutes. So the Korean government tried to introduce the Korean-style K-Iron Dome, but it is technically impossible to defend all the missiles from North Korea. As written in Korean, yes, according to the newspaper article, North Korea can launch the missile maximum 15,000 missiles per hour. And if South Korea introduces the Korean-style Iron Dome, then the Korean-style Iron Dome can defend about 2,000 missiles, which means that during the first 1 hour, about 10,000 missiles can reach the Seoul in 10 minutes. So, as this newspaper article's title shows, the Seoul is a hostage. So within a ministry of conflict, the 25 million residents, including Seoul and Gyeonggi province of the Greater Seoul area, would face total destruction. This is not a risk any reader can rationally take. So to counter North Korea's threat, South Korea has developed a multi-layered defense system. The first one is the Korean Air and Missile Defense System, KAMD. So, but even with these KMD, but as written in the newspaper article, it is impossible to defend all the missiles from North Korea. And Korea also has developed a Korean massive punishment and retaliation system, especially the Hyunmoo missile, monster, which is called a monster missile with an 8-ton warhead. This missile was designed to destroy underground bunker 100 meters deep. Coupled with the U.S. nuclear umbrella, South Korea have a formidable deterrent system. But even with these deterrent system, the question remains, is a balance of terror the same as peace? So personally, I believe if there is a war, total war, South Korea can win, I believe, but too much cost. So I will argue the peace-first approach is very, very important on Korean Peninsula. Actually, the President Jae-myung-ri mentioned this in his inaugural speech. No matter how expensive peace may be, it is better than war. And winning without a fight is better than winning through conflict. And a peace that requires no fighting is the most absolute security. I personally agree with President Lee Jae-myung's speech mentioned. So, not only me, actually the institute, my Institute for Peace and Unification Studies at Seoul National University, we conduct survey every year. And according to the survey result, the survey public opinion also support the peace is more important than the peace is the most important thing. So according to this survey result, the many Korean people regard North Korea is the most threatening countries, and about 90% of the Korean people argued that we asked, do you agree with the Session1 that North Korea will not give up its nuclear weapons? Then about 90% agree. So the many Koreans think that North Korea will not give up its nuclear weapons. But, however, many Koreans, so we ask, which do you think our government should prioritize most as the goal of its policy toward North Korea? Then about more than 60% of people answer that peaceful coexist with North Korea is should be the goal of the Korean policy toward North Korea. So, in conclusion, I said maybe we must acknowledge the strategic reality. Denuclearization of North Korea is currently seems very, very difficult in the short term, especially. Therefore, we must manage the risk, and peace should take a priority in Korea's policy, South Korea's policy toward North Korea. We must pursue peaceful coexistence even with the nuclear-armed North Korea for the time being. So peace is not a luxury. For the 25 million residents in Seoul and Gyeonggi province, millions of, it is a matter of survival. So I, again, want to emphasize that peaceful coexistence or peace should take a priority in South Korea's policy toward North Korea. And peace is very, very important, especially on the current strategic situation on the Korean Peninsula. So it's my end of my presentation. Thank you for your attention, and maybe Kim. President Kim, it's your turn.
Thank you. Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you for your presentation. Yes. I have one question for Dr. Kim Bum-soo and Dr. Oja. Dr. Kim Bum-soo, you made a presentation and finished your presentation with the argument that peace is important. I totally agree with that. But the situation now is North Korea is proposing an antagonistic two-state policy towards South Korea, and North Korea, I think, in the camps of China and Russia, coalition is pretty much strengthened, and trying to do the South Korea passing if North Korea wants to have a dialogue with President Trump. So, what do you think will be the optimal, policy alternative if there is any? Okay, that's the question for you. You can answer later on. Dr. Oja, I want to ask you if you have any solutions or policy suggestions for North Korea case. That's a simple question for you. Okay, before I come back to panelists to respond to my questions, I'll open the floor and collect some questions if there are any questions. Yeah, Professor Jung Gi-yoon.
Okay, thank you, my colleagues, for your insightful presentation. My question goes to first Vasif. Okay, so actually today's presentation is all related with the identity of a country. When it comes to Azerbaijan, you identified your country as a neutral country and non-alliance movement. But unfortunately, there is a misinformation regarding your country, and most Korean people regard Azerbaijan as a pro-Russian country. Yesterday, I got the same question from the journalist from Jungang Daily, and please explain. He asked me that, as far as I know, Azerbaijan is a pro-Russian country, so I said no, but the problem is that the identity comes not from us, but from others. So in this case, how can you describe your country as a neutral country? And how can you fight against the misinformation that is widely spread all over the global society? Azerbaijan is a pro-Russian country. This is my question to Vasif. And another question goes to, this is not a question but a comment to Professor Nakato. How can I put it? So, well, your presentation reminds me of the Walter Whitman's the famous poem, The Song of My Life. And at the conclusion of that poem, the Whitman said, I am large, I contain multitude. And you argue that the Korea has a lot of different identities at the same time, but we Koreans do not agree with that. And actually, all the combination of different identities makes us Korean. And when it comes to the attitude regarding the foreign policies and other things, I think that is a difference between national characteristics of Japanese people and Korean people. You know that what I'm saying. And when it comes to Japanese people, you guys focus on how can I put it? Deeper, and deeper. But when it comes to Korean people, you know, we are born to be, well, prone to grande. So we usually talk in general situation and general things. And also, you pointed out that we have several different identities, but we don't think that they are different. So in this case, how can the ontological, identical problems can be solved is my comment, and that should be delved into your, how can I put it, the research question. And my last question goes to Dr. Nisha Kanoha and Mr. Professor Kim Bom-soo altogether. And Dr. Nisha Khan pointed out several points regarding the nuclear diplomacy and India as a peace-loving country. Even though we have nuclear weapons, we want to use it. But the problem is that everybody believes that any time DPRK can use their nuclear weapons. And actually, our strategy is quite simple. We are not able to counterattack the North Korea's nuclear weapons. So our strategy is quite simple. If I'm going down, you are coming into me. Let's band together. It's the strategy of Korean military. So in this case, how can he solve this problem? As Professor Kim pointed out, what can be the solution to solve the North Korean nuclear problem altogether? Yeah, thank you. Same question. Yeah.
Okay, any other questions for the panelists from the floor? Nobody? Okay, yeah, why don't you begin first? Thank you.
All right, thank you very much for your questions. I would like to start with Professor Jong Kyung's question. Is Azerbaijan pro-Russian country? You know, there is a tendency in academia and policy, academic circles, to identify any country who doesn't have problems in their relations with Russia, or who has not joined the Western sanctions against Russia, is automatically a pro-Russian country. That's a misconception and misplaced argumentation. Azerbaijan has obviously not supported Western sanctions against Russia or has not taken any hostile relations in its relations with Russia, but it is affected primarily by Azerbaijan's geostrategic position and also Azerbaijan's geoeconomic interests. First and foremost, Azerbaijan is a country that is bordered in the north with Russia, in the south with Iran. And under these circumstances, it is inappropriate for our Western partners or anyone else to expect Azerbaijan to take an anti-Russian position in foreign policy. As I mentioned during my presentation, until Russia's war in Georgia in 2008, Azerbaijan's national security concept clearly outlining integration to Euro-Atlantic political and military structures as Azerbaijan's foreign policy objective. But developments of 2008 between Russia and Georgia, and also overall in Europe, demonstrated that Azerbaijan needs to be much more careful in its foreign policy in order to protect our national security. And that's the reason why Azerbaijan started to take more cautious approach in relations with Russia to maintain friendly relations wherever possible. At the same time, to minimize Russia's influence in domestic political and economic structure of Azerbaijan. This is the reason why I wouldn't call Azerbaijan a pro-Russian country. Azerbaijan is a neutral country that has very friendly relations with many global players. Azerbaijan has strategic partnership with United States, signed earlier this year in February. Azerbaijan has strategic partnership with 10 EU member countries. Azerbaijan's 50% of economic trade is with the European Union. 50%, half of our half of our trade turnover is with the EU. And at the same time, Azerbaijan has strategic partnership with China. Azerbaijan has allied relations with Turkey. We have a mutual security commitment with Turkey signed in June 2021. If any country, any third country attacks Azerbaijan or Turkey, we have the obligation to support each other. And at the same time, Azerbaijan has allied relations with Russia, declaration on allied interactions signed in February 2022. So this picture clearly demonstrates that Azerbaijan has very complex positioning in its foreign policy orientation, trying to diversify its geopolitical outreach as much as possible without allying with one specific global player against any other actors. So that's the reason why, in my opinion, it would suffice to characterize Azerbaijan as a neutral, non-aligned country rather than a pro-Russian or pro-Western or pro-China country. And next question was about Azerbaijan's options in foreign policy. Against the background of what I have just said about the outreach Azerbaijan has applied in its foreign policy, one major actor, and I would say number one foreign policy option for the country, has been recently Organization of Turkic States. While Azerbaijan has avoided joining Russia's military and economic blocs, and at the same time, European Union or NATO, Azerbaijan is trying to build its own bloc in Eurasia, together with the countries from Central Asia and Turkey. It is Organization of Turkic States. Last year in October, there was a summit of Organization of Turkic States, OTS, in Azerbaijan. And for the first time, it was proposed by President Aliyev to hold military exercise within OTS. It was a shock to many countries around the OTS, particularly to Russia and China, because this proposal was clearly aimed at opening a military partnership path within OTS and to transforming it into a very consolidated economic and security bloc. So I would say it is number one option in Azerbaijan's foreign policy, and President Ilham Aliyev of Azerbaijan has also multiple times clearly stated that we don't have any other family. We have only one family. It is Turkic family. It is Organization of Turkic States. Indirectly, it meant that we don't want to join either Euro-Atlantic military or political economic blocs or those of Russia. We have only one choice, and it is OTS, Organization of Turkic States. The third question was about Georgia. Our dear friend from Georgia would have answered that question better, but I will do my best. The question was why Georgia is now balancing between Russia and the West, while previously it was a pro-Western country. That's true until recently. Georgia has been very staunch supporter of Euro-Atlantic integration. Even on this path, Georgia had to fight with Russia in order to get out of the conflict which Russia has created in Georgia by occupying its two breakaway regions, Abkhazia and South Ossetia. But unfortunately, in 2008, Georgia failed to restore its territorial integrity, and the two breakaway regions are still under Russia's occupation. And this has been very clear barrier to Georgia's Euro-Atlantic integration as well. And in the meantime, new government came to power in 2012, if I'm not mistaken, led by Bidzina Ivanishvili, who was previously and still a businessman who made his wealth primarily in Russia. And after he came to power, he started to build some balancing gradually between Russia and the West. Some people believe that it was just due to his own personal and economic interests, because he's, according to some people, still affected by his business interest in Russia. But I would say it was clear and very pragmatic choice of Georgian government, because the developments of the recent decades demonstrated that neither EU or NATO is ready to protect Georgia against Russia. And if any conflict happens between Georgia and Russia, there is no one else to come to Georgia's help and defend its national security. And due to the fact that now the regional security situation has deteriorated, it posed very clear threats to Georgia as well. And under these circumstances, it makes sense for Georgian government to abandon its Euro-Atlantic aspirations and try to build some balance between Russia, West, and also at the same time, Georgia has signed strategic partnership with China in 2013, and now Georgia is planning to upgrade this strategic partnership to a higher level, comprehensive strategic partnership. So it shows that the choice of Georgian government at the moment is clear, is similar to that of Azerbaijan, to build some neutrality, some balancing in foreign policy, rather than allying with one power against other powers, and that at the same time to pursue unrealistic objectives like membership to the European Union or NATO, which is clearly unlikely for Georgia in the present security situation in the region. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you so much. Next, Nisha Kantoja, please.
So it's a very, you can say, complicated question you have asked. What is the way forward to stop and tell North Korea about in going such direction? As of in a geopolitical sphere and the environment which is prevailing, we have seen that the blocks are created, and there are two ways, basically, I would say that deterrence and the diplomacy is the two-way. Only by that you should use, and that's basically because you never know your enemy. He might be good, he might be very merciful, and one fine morning he will start. The issue, what has happened today, is that nobody can predict for nobody. I mean, the war which is started, every day I was getting a feeler that one fine morning US can use the nuclear against Iran. But everybody, all countries are interdependent now. The economy is interdependent. It's not like that. It's true. There should be peace, but the philosophy has changed now. Now we basically talk about So just to summarize that, because the mechanism is like that, you need to show your capability, your strength. Otherwise, you need to have a kind of a diplomacy. You need to work on like a group formation. Already, I think South Korea is working very closely with Japan and US. That's a very good block which they have created. Because somebody has to stick and carrot, somebody has to tell him in a diplomatic way, and so things will only then work. On a part, I think what the professor has told and shown also, that the strength regarding the military capability is increasing. So that also conveys a better message to the outside world that we are not weak. If you, then we will. So that's a bad way, but I mean, diplomacy will work, and it's working very effectively. And we are talking a lot about the nuclear. But I think in this present scenario and juncture, no country is in a position to go for a nuclear war or anything. Threats will be there. I can use. We will use. So, but using that is a big question mark. But again, it's you cannot. You can say, rest in peace. Basically, so that somebody okay, we are this, we have got THAAD, we have got this drone system, we have got Iron Dome, and nobody will do. You never know what will happen. So that's diplomacy. The best combination, which as of my understanding is the US and the Japan and the South Korea. I think that bloc will be very effective if they work together for neutralizing and getting the message done to the neighboring countries and go for some kind of settlement for the non-use of the denuclearization, basically. Thank you.
Next, Professor, what's his name?
It's okay.
Yeah, Nakato, please.
Okay. Okay, thank you very much for your constructive comments and questions. As I told you at the beginning of my presentation, this is very much preliminary. I got this idea only 3 weeks ago. So your suggestions, comments, very, very helpful for my future research. So Professor Chon's comments and a question actually reminded me of a conversation with Korea Foundation Tokyo office director. She's not an expert of IR, she's the director. And she said that every time the administration changed in South Korea, so many Japanese people ask her, for example, whether the new administration is pro-Japan or pro-China. But as she said, now Korea is not pro-Japan, not pro-China. Korea is just pro-Korea. I just remember this kind of conversation, and I pretty much persuaded. And but the fundamental question is why South Korea wants to continue to engage with multiple regional orders. For example, if we are just only focusing on BRI, AIB, and maybe security alliance with the United States, probably, yes, you can explain by material explanation or even hedging. But in case of GTI, for example, I'm not really sure how much important it is security, in terms of security and economy. Not much security interest there, or not much economic interest over there, or GTI is not really a battlefield between China and the United States. And why South Korea wants to engage with GTI along with FOIP and BLI and AIB. So I like to ask this kind of question, especially to Korean audience. In case of Japan only focusing on Indo-Pacific, or of course, this is a different context, but APEC, for example. RCEP, maybe you can say that, but not really. Well, Japan might have interest, but very, very cautious about AIB and BLI. So coming back to Professor Kim's question, you may not be persuaded by identity or constructive explanation, because actually, as you mentioned, most of the South Korean behavior, and even Japan, can be explained by materials approach and also hedging especially. But if we are focusing on material aspect, in this context, for example, security alliance with the United States and economic dependence on China, we would assume that Korea and Japan would behave pretty much similarly. But in this case, completely different. Japan is not, again, engaging in AIB and BLI, but South Korea continue to engage. So how do we explain? So that's why I started to think about this question. But again, this is very much preliminary. I need to conduct empirical investigation as well. But thank you very much for constructive comment. I really appreciate it.
Yes, Professor Kim Bum-soo, please.
Yes, actually, Dr. Kim, thank you for your questions, and Professor Jung, thank you for your questions. Maybe your questions seems like what is the best policy toward North Korea on the current situation. It is very, very difficult to say this is the best policy now. But as I mentioned in my presentation, we should acknowledge that the denuclearization should be an ultimate goal of the South Korea's policy toward North Korea, but for the time being, it is impossible. So acknowledging this strategic reality, then we must pursue, the South Korea must pursue the policy of engagement. But as Dr. Kim mentioned, the North Korea, the Kim Jong-un, he argued that he announced the antagonistic two-state doctrine. And the North Korea refused to have any relation with South Korea. As many of you already know, the last official meeting with North Korea was about 8 years ago. For the last 8 years, there was no official meeting between South and North Korea. So on the current situation, even though the South Korea pursue a policy of engagement, maybe North Korea will refuse. So it is very, very difficult situation, but I'd like to argue that under these conditions, this situation, the only way is to pursue a policy of engagement. And we need to have some patience, strategic patience, but continue to try to have an engagement policy. Maybe on the current situation, as I mentioned, I know, yes, North Korea will not change in near future, but we should wait. We should wait. And some Koreans argue that without denuclearization, without the promise of denuclearization, South Korea should not engage with North Korea. But if we argue that the denuclearization of North Korea as a precondition for engagement, which means that for the current time, for the current for current situation, which means that nothing. So we should acknowledge it. As I mentioned many times, North Korea will not denuclearize soon. So then they continue to have the nuclear. They continue to increase their nuclear capability. But under this condition, tension or the antagonistic hostility with North Korea is not the best policy. So we should acknowledge this strategic vulnerability of South Korea. That might be the first step, I think. Maybe, I know it is very, very satisfiable answer, but this is a reality, I think. So yes, so please understand the situation and the strategic reality of Korean Peninsula. Thank you. Yes.
Thank you very much. I think all the panelists' presentations and answers were very excellent. One thing I would like to add to Professor Kim Bum-soo's remark is that I think when all the members, including South Korea, including China and the United States and Japan and possibly Russia, through six-party process or bilateral talk with North Korea, I think we had some hope and myth that we can denuclearize North Korea, and that all failed so far. So I think for now, a lot of countries and experts are still thinking about possible negotiation with North Korea through some sort of frames like arms reductions, arms control, but I don't really buy that. I think we have to assume the near future, that North Korea is completely recognized by the international community as a nuclear state. I think that will be the goal of North Korea. And when you look back, what North Korea has done so far, I think North Korea will achieve that. So I think we have to be ready how to live with nuclear North Korea, with nuclear equipment or nuclear power of South Korea. Whatever way, we have to think about how we have to live with nuclear North Korea in the near future. That's what I think about North Korea policies. But anyway, thank you so much, and please give a big round of applause for the panelists. Thank you.